Here on the Grace Raised podcast, we draw on our personal stories, examine the truth of God's word, and identify the lies, false identities, and unbiblical beliefs that keep us from walking wholeheartedly in the power of our new life through the gift of grace in Jesus. Join us as we share what it is to walk in relationship with Jesus, where we discover new life in death and step into the supernatural power of God's grace and glory. All right, welcome back to the Grace Raised podcast. And I am Raya, your host, and I am here with Mike Corbin, who is a classmate of the Rock School of Ministry for the last 2 years. And he is also a musician, an MRI tech, a father, a husband, all the things. I guess you're probably a friend to some people too.
I do have a couple friends,
okay, great. But you're here, you're going to share your story, and we're going to just kind of talk through what the Lord has been doing and how he's been moving you throughout your life. So,
sure.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Yes.
So where do you live? Where do you go to church? And give me one random fun fact.
Oh, gosh. So I live in Herman, Maine, and I go to church at the Rock Church Hamden campus.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have served at every campus, and I think I've been in every church building at the Rock Church, even going back to the brick building.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I first started coming. So I've seen this church develop a lot, and I've served on the worship team at every single campus. A fun fact about myself. Wow. When I was 5, I snapped my femur while riding a bike.
How did you do that?
So I had, the bikes for little kids when you have to pedal backwards.
Yep.
To brake. Well, I was at the top of a hill, like on a street across from my house, and we were having a race. And I was probably one of the younger kids there. And so I had I'm just going to paint this picture for you.
I'm already disgusted.
I had a hand-me-down bike from my sister.
Okay.
It was a white Barbie bike that I was riding on. And so we say go, and we all start hurtling down this hill. And of course, I'm one of the smaller ones, so I'm basically last.
Right.
And as I'm seeing everybody going to the bottom of this hill and finishing their race with like doing skids in the street.
Oh no.
Yeah. I decided that if I'm going to at least finish last, I'm going to finish with a cool move. So I go to do the same thing as them, and I pedal backwards to start my skid, and my foot falls off of the pedal and goes into the rear bike wheel spokes in the back.
Oh,
and so I tumble. My femur has this spiral fracture now, and one of the neighborhood kids, who was like maybe 3 or 4 years older than me, picks me up and brings me across the street to my house. And my dad noticed that like one leg was shorter than the other.
Oh no!
I didn't really have any scratches or anything. It was just that was the only tell, and the fact that I was screaming.
I was just like immediately picturing, bones sticking out of your leg.
Well, I guess it was close. I guess they said, a couple more centimeters and it would have been out. But I was, my parents drove me to the hospital in the minivan.
I love that you're specifying the car type.
Yeah. I think they just wanted me there as quick as possible because the hospital was like 25 minutes away.
Yeah.
And so they just threw me in the middle seat, and my mom was like feeding me ice chips so I wouldn't pass out.
Yep.
Because of course, when your femur's split in half, you tend to feel every bump.
Yep.
In the road. And so I got to the hospital. I was in traction for a couple weeks. So they were like basically letting that bone, like they put a weight on the end of my foot, and it would kind of like stretch the bones back into where they're supposed to go.
Sounds terrible.
Yeah. I mean, my mom always tells me like she would not wish that on anybody, like to see their kid go through that. I had my birthday in the hospital. But then I eventually had a spica cast. I don't know if you know what spica cast is, but it basically goes all the way around your waist, down one half of your leg that isn't broken, and then all the way down to your toes on the leg that is broken.
Why?
Just so that it could heal and not like you're not.
So you moving your other leg could make it not heal?
So the bar was like across from basically like
Oh,
above one
gotcha.
knee to the other. And so it basically just helped like my pelvis stay still, my whole other leg stay still.
Gotcha.
And then once it was like healing and I could actually start walking, I was actually like walking a bit while I was in this cast. I was it was more of like a jagged waddle, I guess is what you would call it. But yeah, it was a very rough summer.
Yeah.
I
So
get to say that.
essentially, you are like a survivor of some pretty significant
I am, yes.
experiences there.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to put it that way. I guess it was obviously looking back at it now, it's like you don't remember every detail and like how much pain it was in. But yeah, it's just it's almost the fun fact that I use with every
That's
in every
really a
story.
disgusting fact.
Yes, you're welcome. And I don't know, I don't know if we could twist it into a way that brings God into this, but I would say that, maybe looking back at it, maybe it brings my faith in the hospital staff, definitely, because I now am, I have no repercussions of that injury whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which you would think your bone completely splitting in half would, but it's
The Lord just healed you.
there we go.
Yeah.
The Lord healed me perfectly. So that's a great, let's
Just
just,
perfectly.
yeah, in his perfect love and healing miracles. That's,
All right. Well, you were not a Christian, though, at this point.
I was not a Christian at that time, no.
Okay, perfect. This is a great segue then.
Okay, here we go. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, what was your life like before Christ? Who were you? Did you grow up in a Christian home? What was your upbringing like? How did the Lord begin to draw you to him?
So my first experience without me even knowing it was being baptized when I was a infant.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother was a Christian. She was Catholic. Basically, if you're in that town of Van Buren up north, there was like one church. It was Catholic. So most people there just went to that church. And so she would babysit us and we would get a little bit of experience that way of her faith, which was, very Catholic. She had a rosary. We did get these books when we first started reading, these Bible story books. And it wasn't like really in the case that we were finding ourselves fascinated with these stories, but we wanted to hear ourselves read.
Yeah.
And impress our grandmother. So we would, as she was cooking us like mac and cheese on the stovetop, we'd be like, oh, listen to this. And then we'd read a Bible story. And she'd be like, that's great. Awesome. And then my sister's turn. She'd be like, but listen to this.
Yeah.
And then she would read. So I actually kind of was able to dive into some of these Christian stories before I even knew anything about it. And so I got kind of like a little bit of experience that way with kind of who God was, how Catholics kind of perceived him. And then going, as I was a little bit older, I would go to Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents would drop me off at Sunday school and I would get small lessons that way of who Jesus was and what he did for us. So I kind of got an experience that way. And I found myself whenever I was in church, I mean, I had pretty hardcore ADD at that time and just I had a hard time paying attention. So I never really, as a kid, it's not really, you don't find it that important to you if people aren't impressing on you how important it is in your everyday life.
Yep.
And so my dad being an atheist and my mom being more on the agnostic side, were still willing to give me that experience, at least for me to make up my own mind as to what I wanted to do. And I'm sure whatever my decision would have been fine to them. They would have been like, go with it. But slowly sports ended up being more of a priority for me than that. So I ended up sort of abandoning Sunday school to be able to practice with friends, basketball, go in the gym, do all that stuff. And so Christianity, God just wasn't a huge part of my life other than on Easter and on Christmas.
Right. The big ones.
The big ones. Yeah. So we dove into it, and it wasn't it wasn't until I met my now wife that I finally was able to have those thoughts again about, like, who is God? Like,
Right.
now my wife, who's doing devotionals every morning, she's a Christian. I'm not a Christian, but I see her doing these things. And I would ask questions,
Mhm.
and she wasn't like forcing me into anything at all. She wasn't like, well, now that we're dating.
The ultimatum.
Correct. Yeah, she never gave me that ultimatum, but we connected right off the bat. And that connection kind of, drove that relationship. And then when we were still dating, she mentioned that she wanted to, go to church together.
Yeah.
So then that's what we ended up doing. Because I never had an issue with Christianity or having a discussion about Christianity. And
You were open-minded.
I was very open-minded. Yeah, I just needed some guidance, some facts that I had questions to. And my grandfather, I didn't really know this growing up, but as I became an adult and started diving into Christianity more, I found out that my grandfather, so my dad's dad, was also very interested in it. But he wasn't a Christian. But he had tons of books on Christianity, like either side, proven Christianity, disproven Christianity. Why like what could have been this possible worldly explanation for the crossing through the Red Sea, right? So it was seasonal. It was whatever the reasons were.
Seasonally,
you know what I mean?
Just
Right. Yeah. Like there's a certain, time of year and day that it gets shallow enough that the Israelites would have been able to cross over, and they knew the timing of it, so they kind of used that to their advantage. But
interesting.
yeah, so there was a lot of that stuff kind of in that book.
Okay.
And so, but he would be very open to like letting Jehovah Witnesses and stuff like come in his house and have a conversation with them, and he was very open to it. When he died, I'm not 100% sure where he landed on his faith, but I kind of took that same viewpoint of it, of like, I don't know, maybe I'm not so interested in the where's this gonna leave me when I'm dead, but while I'm here, I'd like to know your viewpoint. You know what I mean? At least
Right.
just to have a conversation. So it was kind of cool to hear that he was like that, and he would like to dive into that stuff. And I would never shy away from that. Even when I wasn't a Christian. And so I had questions for Christians, and they weren't being answered to what I thought was a great definitive answer.
Okay. Can you give me like an example? Like, what were some of the things that you were wrestling through that you just wanted like to understand? What were, I guess, some questions that you wanted answered?
Yeah. So from from the perspective of like crazy stories, that was one of mine. Like Noah's Ark.
Okay.
How was that possible?
So yourself, like the story of Jesus, you couldn't accept salvation because you had questions about the Bible and the stories that are being told. And
Right.
like this all seems kind of like fanciful. Like this is like these wild, crazy stories. People just make these things up, and then we all just believe that this actually happened, and we're all just living based on these lies or like stories. And so, is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. So the whole thing with the Bible is that it was all supposed to be truthful and inerrant, and my mind could wrap around the fact that God came to Earth and took the form of a human
Mm-hmm.
and died for us. I didn't really understand like what he was dying for specifically, but I knew it was like for our own good, for humanity at that point, and that I could wrap my head around. But then the fact that there was this flood, this worldwide flood, that one man built this huge boat and somehow manipulated every animal species to come upon that boat by his own sheer will. If I can't believe that, and Christians believe that, then I can't believe the Jesus thing either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if I can't believe some things that are in the Bible, then I can't believe the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I was kind of like wrestling with. It was like, Jesus died for our sins. I would get the gospel,
Mm-hmm.
but I was stuck on so many other things. And of course, the other things that people end up being stuck on too, which is, how is evil allowed in a world that is governed by this
Loving God.
correct?
Yeah.
And so these are the questions that I was just given answers to, like, you got to have faith. And I was like, well, what? You know what I mean?
What does that even mean?
Right. I can have faith in anything. You know what I mean?
I just choose to believe whatever I want.
Correct. Yeah. And it was almost like, it almost felt like people were just trying to, like, bring themselves comfort, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like, they were maybe, or this was my opinion at the time, that they were just nervous about death or their own mortality. So they really liked this thought of a heaven and didn't like the thought of a hell. And if they were going to die and anything was going to happen, if they weren't just going to go out into non-existence, then this would be a great alternative.
Right.
And so they found this option and they say, okay, I believe that this happened because it works out well for me. But, I guess all these other stories are in the Bible too, and I'll go with those too, And so if they're putting their faith in Jesus, then now without any way to back it up, I'm going to go ahead and put my faith in everything else. And so that was like the answer that I was getting as I was kind of questioning other Christians. And then not only that, but I was also seeing Christians who went to church acting like me, not, I mean, they weren't really strong in their faith in that they were trying to have other people be saved or trying to, make huge changes in their lives. There was just like no evidence that they even went to church.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They were living like the world.
Correct. Yeah.
Like you.
Right. Yeah, correct. And that's not necessarily like I'm saying that they were like bad people.
But you weren't a bad person from a worldly perspective either. It sounds like your parents gave you a lot of room to grow and develop kind of your own ideas and theology. It wasn't like you were just running around on the streets like doing drugs or just living a party style life. You were genuinely trying to be a good person.
Right.
You were trying and you were open-minded, you were curious, like all of these characteristics that I think from the world standards, people will be like, oh yeah, you're a great person. You're moral, you're upstanding, you care about people. So what was it specifically that you were seeing that there were some people that weren't living morally good, right? That were living like you, but they were claiming to be Christian. So what was the difference that you were seeing?
I mean, so you're right. I thought I was being a good person. I thought I was living a life that, because I had a lot of like anxiety growing up, either being caught doing something or having to confess something. So that kind of drove my attitude and actions more than anything, really. But I did see my parents raise me as someone to help others or quote unquote do good, and they would punish me when I did bad. So obviously things that they told me not to do or things that were sneaky or whatever were wrong. And so those punishments said that those things were wrong. I always have this picture of my dad when we were at a gas station, and there was a tractor trailer that was trying to back up on Main Street into this gas station. And my dad was a truck driver. He still is a truck driver. And so he had empathy for this person. And so he left us and went into the middle of the street and just helped this person in this truck back up. He like basically stopped traffic on each side until this trucker was like able to back up. And so like I saw this empathy, and when you do good, it makes you feel good. And when you do bad, it's supposed to make you feel bad, right? And I wasn't perfect. And, I did some things, but I was also seeing other people doing those things, whether it was lying or cheating or being rude, not being loving to, showing as much love as you should, gossip. is always a big one. And so there was no separation in that. And so I believed that they were possibly, even though I never had this conversation with them, just from the outside, it looked like they were possibly just going to church because that's how you end up in heaven.
Right.
So you go to church on Sunday morning, you check off that box, God sees you going to church on Sunday morning, and then you're good then,
Mm-hmm.
right? You did all your sacraments that you needed to do. You're doing all the things that the Catholic Church tells you to do, and so now you're good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I had done mine. I wasn't going to church every Sunday, but I felt like maybe I checked off enough boxes. Maybe the good that I was doing was outweighing the bad enough that God was seeing me as a good person.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely knew that there was a lot worse people than me. Right? People who were angry, would pick on people, beat up people, whatever the case is. Steal, do drugs, use their body in ways that probably shouldn't be used. And I don't know. It's like I felt like comparing myself to them, I was pretty good. But now that I'm a Christian, obviously, I see that that's, I mean, who is good, right?
So did you feel like I just want to quick backtrack for 1 second. So when you were saying earlier that one of the reasons that you were struggling with Christianity is that you saw some Christians that were not living what you expected a Christian to live, but almost like this justification of like, oh, well, they live this way and I live this way, so maybe we're like Gucci. I hate that you just used that. Like, I said it, I was like, oh, the regret.
We're going to different generation here in this podcast.
what has happened to me? But so if you're seeing that, like, there's almost this sense of justifying yourself because you see all these other Christians, but that's also like a reason why you weren't fully believing what they were claiming and teaching. Does that mean that you were seeing other Christians that did live differently than you were living?
Not really.
Okay.
I honestly, like, the people that I would talk to who weren't even, like, I guess technically Christian, they would say these things also. If I'm a good enough person, then I don't need to gather in a church with people.
Gotcha.
I heard that one a lot, actually. Like, if I'm living the same way that they're living, what's the extra thing of going in the church? Like, I could be a good person without going in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know my morals. I try to be a good person, whatever the case may be. I mean, I didn't have too much experience with what I would consider people who have fallen in love with God and have taken these drastic approaches to changing their life to become more Christ-like.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that a lot back then.
And back then, being like when you were growing up in the Catholic Church, or even like when you started going to church with your now wife.
Yeah. Back then, I mean, other than Sunday school, I didn't really, like I said, attend church other than Christmas and Easter. And so I just knew of the people that went to church that were like in my class or like, the classes around me. And that's why I didn't feel like they were necessarily better than me. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't acting better than me. I still saw things that they did that weren't Christ-like, but I didn't even know what being Christ-like was.
Right.
To be honest, at that time, I was just like, I'm probably good. Like, me and God are probably good, and he knows my heart. I didn't understand fully what Jesus was at the time. When I was in Sunday school, we'd color him. And we would color the cross and, draw on a lamb or something. And they would try to explain it, but I just never grasped it because I was so under the impression that I was still somehow needing to earn it through whatever good actions I was doing.
Yeah.
So, and that God was this scorekeeper of all the things I was doing. And
I think it's hard to see it any other way when you're not having when you weren't seeing any other examples of it, right? Like, if your whole community and the circles that you're in are just living the same way that you do, and you're all just you're going through the motion, then what possibly could there have been that would have even made you question?
Correct.
You're not seeing anything that's like, oh, that's interesting, or that's different, or like that person like truly like this is their whole life. This
Yeah.
is their whole world. And so that makes perfect sense to me that would be.
And for the most part, the people that I knew that were going to church were kind of raised that way already. So whether they wanted to go to church or not, I don't really know. They could have just been going because their parents were going. And so I literally had zero interactions with anybody that I knew that was like, you'll never believe. Like, I got saved. I found out who Jesus was. He's the Lord over my life. You know what I mean? There was none of that at all. And that wouldn't even come into play until years later. Like I said, when I met my wife and we started going to church, and I don't know, I guess it was just happenstance, but we went to a church, the first church that we went to, and I remember the message because it was very not you, but God type of message. And as a new Christian, I wasn't ready for that, I don't think, at that point. And basically they were saying, if you want to be, I don't know, if you want to be in an accountant in New York City and want to make all this money, whatever, but God wants you to be a janitor, then you need to be a janitor.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I was like listening to this, and I probably wasn't grasping his total, theme or what he was trying to get across. But I was basically hearing that who cares what you want? God doesn't care about your desires. He wants you to do what he wants you to do. And
blind obedience.
Correct. Yeah. And I was like, that made me nervous. You know what I mean? I was like, well, I don't want to know this God, right? That doesn't want me to enjoy anything, or like I'm just gonna try to follow what he wants me to do. And if he wants me to clean toilets or some other profession that I don't have a passion for, what kind of love is that displaying?
Right.
Basically. And so then I eventually came to the Rock Church here. And after growing up seeing only Catholicism and seeing a priest at the front wearing holy garments and like kind of learning that he's sort of the mediator, right? So like we can go to him with our sins. He'll talk to God. He'll let us know what we need to do to,
get right.
Get right, and to feel like, oh, God loves me again. After coming from that background of feeling like whoever was teaching me about the Bible was holier than I was, and then coming to the Rock Church. I'm not trying to put a shout out for the Rock Church, but this is just where I landed.
It's okay. I've had a lot of people from the Rock.
Okay, all right.
Podcast. I feel like now there's more Rock people on here than anyone else.
All right, I didn't want to be like, woo, woo, Rock Church, come here. But this is the first place where I was hearing a pastor talking about all the wrong things that he's done.
Yeah.
All the mistakes that he's made. And basically saying, listen, I'm not better than you. I'm not holier than you. I just have this passion in me to tell you the word of God. And that's it. And so I was basically not dumbfounded, but I was very surprised by that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, so this is just a man, a regular man who feels like God is telling him to tell us about God and what he knows about God and what God's revealed to him. It's not that he's closer to God than us. It's not that his prayers are exceptionally stronger than ours, or God only hears his, so that I would have to come to him to be like, what does God want me to do? And that was just so refreshing. And to be honest, throughout my childhood, I didn't know that I could have a personal relationship with God. I didn't know that it was up to me, that it could just be between me and him, that he could talk to me and that I can talk to him and he'll hear me.
Right. That Jesus is our mediator.
Correct.
Not a man.
Correct.
I mean, Jesus was a man, but he's also God. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. It's not someone left here on earth, that is held accountable to get everyone, like, the information from God just to pass it to us.
Right.
That information is already given to us, and that whatever needs to be done to us for our salvation was already done a long time ago. And that we just need to do our part of just accepting it, which is insane, by the way, because again, growing up just knowing the Catholic faith, it was like, well, I need to do something, right? Like I need to
But acceptance is something,
Correct.
right? Like it's a response, it's a choice. And acceptance will lead to other actions that we are doing
Yeah.
that are the evidence that we've actually accepted it.
Correct.
Right? Like it's not just like I can believe that Jesus is the Son of God and did these things, but then I have zero like response to that. No, we have to have a response.
Right.
And so yes, it's not like it isn't works, like we're not doing anything to earn our
Right.
salvation, but that acceptance is a choice that we make.
Yes.
And then we're working
Right.
it out as the evidence of that
Right.
acceptance.
Yeah. So it was almost like, it almost felt backwards for me because I thought I had to do stuff and then he'd accept me.
Right.
When in reality, it's he did the stuff and I have to accept him.
Am I going to accept the truth and the reality that what he did was enough?
Right. Correct.
And that I literally cannot be God enough
Right.
to do anything.
Yes. Yeah. And that was kind of the point in my life where I was like, okay, so this pastor feels very secure in his destiny. And he's telling me that he's no better than I am.
Mm-hmm.
He could be worse, like you never know about someone's journey or what they've been through or what they've done. And I use worse in air quotes because every sin is a sin. Right. And so we've all
Fallen short.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've all fallen short. We sin daily. But hearing that from someone who was, I thought would just be, I guess, quote unquote, special. Right.
The holy person.
Correct. Yeah. It was just crazy for me to hear that. And so that was kind of like my first instance where I was like, well, it's not what I thought. God maybe isn't who I thought he was, and Christianity isn't probably what I thought it was. It wasn't too long after that me and my wife ended up getting married, and it was only after that, during my X-ray career, when I used to have students come to me from the college to learn from our facility, that I actually ran into a student who was challenged me with it. And it's not that like my wife wouldn't talk to me about it, about like her faith, but it wasn't, I think she didn't want to like scare me off or like try to push it on me, like because I am, you have to be. But it almost sometimes just takes that. And a lot of people are different. So like some people, it's not good when a Christian is trying to push it on them, but sometimes that's what people need is just, and I think maybe Christians need to hear that
Mm-hmm.
some people do need that. Right. So don't be afraid to, if you're just planting a seed at that point, then that's what your job is.
Yeah, I think that there are some people, and I say this because I've heard people say this, right, on different sides. Even just like when we were in RSM last year, we were talking about evangelism.
Yeah.
There are, and apologetics, there are these like two camps really where people either believe that it's all logic and we just have to have the right answer for everything and then everyone will come to faith and believe.
Right.
But if that was the case, then we could say like we can conclusively prove that Christianity is real, and therefore any logically minded person would be able to come to that conclusion and accept faith and their relationship with Christ. And then there are people that believe that it is literally only through the power of the Holy Spirit and that God will just open your eyes to seeing salvation. And so there's no point in like pushing people and trying to berate them because that's not loving or kind. But it's really both, right? Like we're all different. God is going to speak to us in different ways where you are. Like you're a very logical minded person. And so you wanted answers to questions. You didn't want to just blindly believe, which is honorable and actually biblical. But there is also that other part of the Lord opening your eyes and softening your heart to see what is true and giving you even a desire to pursue that. And so I think that we tend to kind of fall into these camps of thinking like, oh, well, apologetics isn't for me. I don't like apologetics. I don't like, and I when I'm saying apologetics, I mean literally just like being able to give an answer for why you believe what you believe. And some people feel like that's just, it's too much. We don't need to do any of that. The gospel is sufficient. The gospel is sufficient. Right. But sometimes, like, especially in your case where you had grown up around the faith and seen all of these things in people, that it wasn't genuine faith. Like, know the story, but the story doesn't save.
Correct.
Jesus saves.
Correct.
And you have to encounter him personally.
Right.
And actually be able to accept, right?
Yep.
Like what he does. It's not just like believing, okay, like some people believe this might be true or it might not be true. I'm going to do these things and hope that it is true. We step into this place of believing what is true.
Yes.
And that is what changes. And so I think like as we are evangelizing to people and sharing our faith, we need to be bold, but also sensitive to the Spirit. And it's both.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think, in my personal journey, I don't think it was just one thing, right? I think there was a line of things that drove me to where I am today. And so I say that because how I grew up, even having, I guess, the concept of a God, to going through life. I mean, once in a while I would pray to God, not knowing if he was hearing me, if he was real, hoping, I guess. And then to this student who is like challenging me now.
Yeah.
Who's like, who is Jesus? Do you know who Jesus is? You know, what are your questions? And so now I'm face to face with someone who's so upfront about it and so determined to win me over. And I already have this kind of background of who I think God is, right? And so he is basically just wanting to, I think he saw that I just had all these questions that just were left unanswered.
Yeah.
And so he's like, give them to me.
He's like, yes, finally.
Correct. Yeah.
Someone.
Yeah. And not only that, but people were telling me that this was going to happen, that this student was going to come and, probably talk to me about it. And
you
I was
were
like,
warned.
Correct. Yeah. And I was like, that's fine. Like, I don't care about that. And actually, I do have some questions. So if you can answer them, great. I didn't have the highest of hopes because in the past, when I've asked people, I'd get that.
Just
you got to have faith. Yeah. Yeah. So I had this student just ready to answer these questions. And I mean, he seemed super excited that I was like entertaining him and trying to like dig into it. And so I was actually kind of amazed a little bit because I was asking him, he was young too. I think he was like 18. And I would ask him a question and he would literally flip right to the spot. And he'd be like, right here, this is what it says. And then he would kind of explain it to me. So he would do this sort of apologetics explanation of what it means for nowadays, right? So, and how to look at it in a different perspective that like made sense. Because if you're just reading through the Bible and you're just taking it all literally and you're trying to understand all the parables that are being said or why they're using this language, it's tough. And so he's like explaining it to me, and the things that he was saying was making sense. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, you answered that one, but what about this one? And then again, flip. And he would find the page and he would answer the question. I was like, okay, this kid knows his stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously. It seems like he's been asked these questions before, or at least highly prepared for some of these questions. I mean, I wasn't asking questions that probably haven't been asked a bunch anyway, right? I had the same views as people who are agnostic, dealing with evil, dealing with these stories that you just feel like can't be real.
Right.
So he was just very good at explaining biblical principles to me, explaining exactly who Jesus was. And every time he answered my question, he'd be like, what else? It kind of gave me like okay, so he's super sure about these answers, right? He's very like black and white about it. And I felt like he was very genuine too. Like he wasn't trying to just I didn't feel like he was trying to bring me onto his team.
He was answering questions he genuinely believed he had the answers for.
Correct. And he thought would help my life, right? He knew that Jesus would help my life. And so I felt like that was his intention to being so persistent.
So do you feel like, I just want to explore this statement just a little bit. So getting someone on your team is different than someone who truly, genuinely believes that what they believe in is true and will enhance your life. Like it's in your best interest.
Correct.
So do you feel like, kind of prior to that, maybe it was almost like you had Baptists and Catholics and, Protestants and like atheists and agnostics and like all of these different kind of categories. It was almost like teams. If we're just picking a team to go with, we're going to do the one that feels best and supports our color. Do you feel like that's kind of how you viewed people trying to get you to come along with what they believed?
I mean, I didn't really have a ton of people trying to bring me onto their team, but I didn't know that there was different religions, and even like within Christianity that there was different denominations. Like I knew enough at that point to know that. The things that you would hear about, Jehovah Witnesses, they're going to come to your house and they're just going to try to convince you, to think what they think.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode. We're taking a break right now, but be sure to come back next week to hear the rest of my conversation with Mike Corbin. You've been listening to the Grace Raised podcast. Thank you for taking the time to be a part of this conversation. As a crowd-funded project, we rely on your reviews, subscriptions, and help to share this ministry with others. If you were blessed by this episode, please consider subscribing to the show or leave us a review wherever you listen. If you would like to share your story, you can submit a request at our website at thegraceraisedpodcast.com/contact us, or send us an email at thegraceraisedpodcast@gmail.com. If you would like to donate or help support the ministry, you can click the donate link in the show notes or go to graceraisedpodcast.com/donate. As always, we are so thankful that you are here and pray that the Lord will continue the good work he has begun in you. Grace be with you all.